Hi and welcome to my channel. Today I wanted to come and talk a little bit more about a topic that I personally found very interesting because right now I am in the process of writing and creating my first cozy mystery novel. So as you may know or may not know, in cozy mysteries, setting is very important. So right now, currently I'm based in Barcelona, Spain. So I've been researching a little bit more about, just stories from the city. Anything that's creepy or interesting, mysterious, etc., etc. And I came across this particular story. So yeah, I wanted to come and share it with you in the hopes that maybe you will also find it interesting and somehow intriguing. And yeah, so today we're going to be talking about the Vampire of Barcelona. And before we get into it, I just wanted to give you maybe a couple of trigger warnings just in case you find some of the topics a little bit, sensitive. And yeah, if you choose to, probably stop the video at this point, that's completely fine. But yeah, we're going to be talking about, child abuse and mutilation in a way, I guess you would say. Also, we will discuss mental illness, taking advantage of a vulnerable person, and we'll also very briefly mention someone. I want to say, the actual word, but I'm wondering, since it's on YouTube, maybe I should say the Gen Z version of it. But okay, so people, unaliving themselves, like trying to commit such acts. Anyway, so without anything else, so these were the trigger warnings. And yeah, let's get into it. So, the Vampire of Barcelona. By the way, I might be looking down because I have a few notes. So yeah, let's get into it. So Barcelona. Imagine the beginning of the 20th century. Things, what was happening. I mean, things, I guess, in the beginning of the 20th century were already a little bit, rowdy, maybe is the word for it. So, and for Barcelona in particular, things were a little tough because a lot of children at that time were going missing. And the sad thing is that because most of the children that went missing at the time were, either orphans or their families were quite poor. So unfortunately, nobody really cared. Like the police didn't really do all that much as far as I understand. However, that all changed in February of 1912 with the disappearance of a 3-year-old girl. So she was walking down the street, or rather she was, I think she was in a square or something like that, and all of a sudden she disappeared. And what happened was that a woman approached her and offered her sweets. So when the girl accepted the sweets, the woman just put a black bag over her head and just, dragged her in an unknown location. So when finally, this girl, and her name, by the way, yeah, maybe it's good to mention the name. Her name was Teresita Congost. I very much apologize for butchering her name. I will call her Teresita from now on, just because it sounds easier, and I think I'm almost pronouncing it correctly. So Teresita, the 3-year-old girl, she finds herself in this unknown apartment, and this woman, who she's never seen before, tells her, "You no longer have parents. Teresita is not your name. You have this other new name that I will call you by now, and yeah, you need to start calling yourself that as well." She chopped off her hair and told her, "You're not allowed to explore the apartment. You're not allowed to go near the windows. You just need to sit in this one room, and that's it." And what Teresita found in the apartment was actually another 5-year-old girl. Well, not another, but just another little girl. She was 5 years old. Her name was Angelita, and she had similar instructions, basically. And yeah, so one day the two girls, because the woman who had kidnapped them, she was in the habit of just leaving them for quite, for long stretches of time on their own. So at one point the girls were exploring the apartment, and Teresita did go out to the window, and there she actually saw a neighbor. And the woman saw her back, obviously, but when she asked, the kidnapper, essentially, who is this girl, the woman just basically closed the window in her face and, didn't say anything. So the neighbor thought this was suspicious, and plus she had already seen the picture of Teresita in the newspaper, so she thought, okay, maybe something is there. However, for whatever reason, she didn't go to the police. Instead, she told the butcher, who told someone else, who told someone else. And then finally, the information, reached the authorities. So, when the police heard about this, they were like, okay, maybe this is weird because, the neighbor said she doesn't have any children, as far as I know. So who is this girl and what is she doing there? So the police went to arrest the woman, and yeah, so they had a search warrant for her apartment, and of course there they found the two girls. So they arrested the woman, they took the girls into custody, and yeah, this is where the story gets really creepy. I mean, if it wasn't creepy enough already, with a kidnapper on the loose. So who was the woman actually that was holding these children hostage? So her name is Enriqueta Marti. I think that's how you pronounce it. Enriqueta Marti, something like that. But I will call her Enriqueta because, again, it sounds like something I'm pronouncing in a fairly, more manageable way. So Enriqueta, she was born in 1868, and she moved to Barcelona to be a nanny, basically, but she very quickly found herself in need of cash, of more money. So she turned to prostitution, which at that time, what else were women to do back in the day? So yeah, she became a prostitute, and in fact, she actually opened her own brothel. But we'll get to that in a second. So in between, so while she was prostituting, she got married to Juan Puyallo. Not sure how you pronounce that, but Juan, let's call him Juan. So she married Juan, and Juan, he was, I guess he had issues with her being a prostitute. So, yeah, I mean, their marriage broke up. Actually, they got together and broke up 6 different times. So yeah, eventually they did break up. They didn't have any children, and Enriqueta went on to open her own brothel. And the thing is, it is said, so a lot of the things, I guess are hearsay maybe, but they were quoted as facts. So for the time being, I'll quote them as facts as well. So it is said that the majority of Enriqueta's clients were actually the affluent and rich of Barcelona at the time. So, and they had some pretty, interesting desires, such as sleeping with children. So Enriqueta, being, the sensible businesswoman that she was, she obliged. So that was her kidnapping children. So she would actually, dress herself as a beggar woman, and she would go to the poorest places in parts of town, and, in the hopes of luring children, abandoned-looking children. That's how they were described. So either orphans or maybe, children of very poor families who, maybe if they disappeared, nobody would bat an eye. Including, one time, so she was super nice to this young mother who had a 6-month-old baby, and the mother was starving, so Enriqueta gave her some food, and she was super nice. So the mother gave her baby to Enriqueta to hold, and then all of a sudden, that woman, Enriqueta, and the baby were just gone, and the mother never saw her baby again. So that's quite a tragic story, really. But that's who Enriqueta was. And another thing that she she was doing, she had a side hustle apart from the brothel and the prostitution, and all the sex trafficking thing that she had going on. She had a side hustle where she was selling potions and pills and things like that, and it is said that she was using the children's blood to do that. So once at a certain point, once a child was, I guess, lived its usefulness, you may say, she would kill them and then just use their blood and other body parts for various concoctions. Like, for example, she would make, I think it was a pill was it a pill or a potion? I think it was a potion that would cure allegedly tuberculosis, which at that time was an incurable disease and it was quite scary. So people were, very much afraid of it. So this is the backstory of who Enriqueta was. And so when the police started, questioning the two girls, so Teresita, she basically repeated the story that I just said to you. And then Angelita, now she had a much more interesting story, because she told the police that there was actually another boy in the apartment prior to Teresita arriving. His name was Pepito, and so Angelita said that she saw Enriqueta, the woman, kill him on the kitchen counter. And in fact, while the girls were exploring the apartment, they did find a bag of bloody clothes and a knife just stashed somewhere in the apartment in another room. And so when the police went, obviously to search the place, they did find that particular bag of clothes. They found a knife, and they actually found a lot of other things. I will just read them to you because it's just, so they did find the clothes, and then they also found a lot of human remains, like the skull of a 3-year-old child, a series of bones that corresponded to a 3, 6, and 8-year-old children, 50 pitchers, jars, wash bowls with preserved human remains, and just skeletons of hands, powdered bones, children's hair, all of these disgusting, awful things, they were found inside the apartment, apparently. So obviously investigators wanted to know, what the heck. They went to Enriqueta and they asked her first about Teresita, and then she said, oh, I just found this girl wandering around on her own, being hungry, feeling hungry and, alone. I found her yesterday. She literally said, I found her yesterday. And so, the police was like, no, that's not true, because the neighbors saw the girl a few days prior, right? Because by the time the police got the information and the intel, because the neighbor didn't come right away, already a few days had passed, so clearly that was a lie. Then they asked her about Angelita, and first she said that Angelita was her own daughter. But then, her husband testified that that was not true. They didn't have any children as far as he knew. So she actually ended up confessing that Angelita was her niece. So in fact, she was her sister-in-law's child, basically. So Enriqueta apparently was present and was delivering the baby. And when, the baby was born, she told her sister-in-law that the baby was stillborn, when in fact it wasn't. And so she just took the baby for herself, and presented her as her own daughter, apparently. So that was the explanation for that. And as for the human remains, what Enriqueta said was that she was studying anatomy. She was just very curious about the human body and how it worked and all of these things. And but the police wasn't buying it. So after, some more interrogation, they actually, she actually confessed that she was using the body parts for her potions. And that was as far as what happened during interrogation. One thing that, to keep in mind, by the way, is that so she never actually confessed to murdering anyone, and curiously enough, she was never charged with murdering anyone. So this is, this, we'll talk a little bit more about it in a minute. But basically, she was charged with all of these other things, like she admitted to, to the kidnapping. She admitted to also performing abortions. She admitted to the prostitution, but, not to the murders. In any case, she was thrown in jail. The public was, outraged by obviously what was happening. So Enriqueta, at some point when she was in jail, she tried to commit suicide with a wooden spoon, or no, rather a wooden knife, but that didn't work. And so, because of the public outcry, because, people just wanted justice for those missing children, they, put her in protective custody, trying to, prevent her from harming herself anymore. So unfortunately, what ended up happening is that on May 13th, 1913, they found her hung in her cell. And what is presumed to have happened is that her two other cellmates lynched her. Now, there are speculations as to the exact causes of that. Some are saying that those two cellmates were paid off by the affluent people of Barcelona at the time because they didn't want for Enriqueta to, reveal their secrets. Because it's also said that in her apartment, police found this, black book of basically a list of her clients and their, desires, like what they did, who they did it with, all of these things. But I mean, nothing really came of it, so I don't know. Also, another thing is that in general, it is considered that Enriqueta maybe had too many, just too many connections to, high level people. Because also the year when she opened her brothel, which was 4 years prior to her death, she was briefly arrested and very quickly, let go. Exactly because, allegedly she just had too many friends in high places. So this is, yeah. So this is what is happening, what was happening with her. However, so yeah, technically, she never, like, the kids never saw justice because Enriqueta died. However, this is not where the story ends, because her official cause of death was actually listed as cancer. And now there are more historians coming forward, examining the case and saying that there is a very good chance that a lot of the things that were in the reports actually never happened. So here is what they were talking about in particular. So first of all, the apartment where Enriqueta lived, she shared that apartment with her grandfather. So killing children inside the apartment probably would have been very difficult with her grandfather there and no one noticing anything. Like, it's very, I mean, I guess it's very, it sounds a little unbelievable, just because also if you go, so she lived in I guess present day Raval, which is this neighborhood where back in the day, the poorest people lived. Now it's more kind of a hipster area, you would say, but it's still a shady area. So it's not a place where you want to go alone at night. Let's just put it like that. And also, the streets are very narrow. The houses are very close to each other. Like, just this kind of architecture that doesn't really allow for all that much privacy. So I don't know. I think maybe this is what they were referring to. That would have been difficult. Also, another thing is that Enriqueta. Sorry, I lost my train of thoughts. But yeah, another thing was that Enriqueta apparently was said to have had mental illness, and so all of this, like this whole operation, would have been very difficult for someone to, basically orchestrate, right? So it would have required a lot of foresight and forethought and planning and execution and all of these things. And it is said that Enriqueta just didn't possess that high level of intelligence. It's just, she just was a little bit mentally challenged in that way. So yeah, it would have been very hard for her to actually have done all of these things. And as for the human remains, so while they did actually find bones and things like that, again, looking back on it, when historians reviewed them, and I guess forensic scientists as well had reviewed basically the remains that were found, and what they found was that the bones didn't really match with fresh bones, so to say. I mean, they were a few years old, but they were more, how to say, they just appeared to have been exhumed from graveyards, rather than someone who was killed and then dismembered and whatever, like left to rot in the open air, I guess, something like that. So yeah, so actually it is believed that probably she just exhumed graves for to get body parts for her potions, which, I mean, it's obviously disgusting, but it's not murder. And which brings me to the point that I said earlier, that she was actually never charged with murder. which to me at least it says, despite all these, remains that they found, or the bloody clothes, the knife, and all of these things, they actually never had enough evidence to charge her. So I mean, that was pretty interesting. And then another thing another thing is that Enriqueta actually suffered from cancer of the uterus, which caused her to bleed profusely. And so actually the bag of bloody clothes that they found was her own, just hers, from one of those fits that happened. And yeah, I guess it was just something that she never got to washing. So yeah, basically now the theory is that actually Enriqueta was just the patsy, just the scapegoat for, the people who were kidnapping children at the time and just, putting them in sex trafficking and human trafficking rings, unfortunately. And yeah, nobody, looked any further than that for those missing children, because they had an explanation essentially. So yeah, all in all, that is the story of the Vampire of Barcelona. Overall, quite a sad story, no matter what angle you look at it. Because, even if you believe the full story and if it's correct or not, if it's correct, it's horrific and awful for the children. On the other hand, if it's not 100% correct, it's just sad that, basically people with mental illness can be taken advantage of in such a way, and then nobody really cared to follow up and look for the missing children because they had, quote unquote, an explanation. So yeah, all in all, not the most positive endings for a story, but yeah, I thought that was interesting. I actually went to the street the other day, and yeah, right now it looks just like a regular hipster street. Nothing interesting there. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below. And yeah, do you think Enriqueta was guilty? Do you think she was innocent? Like, where do you stand? And I'd love to hear from you. Also, if you know like any other creepy stories that maybe happened in Barcelona, I would love to hear from you, because I would love to cover them and find out more about them. And also, just yeah, subscribe and follow for more, and I will see you again next time. Bye.